everybody, it's Holger Müller here from Constellation Research, together with my esteemed co-host Liz Miller. Hey Liz, how are you doing?
I'm good, Holger. What's up? What's new? What's going on?
And we're here to talk about the Olympics, right? And doping bans of ice skaters, right? So
we're here with in-depth coverage of women's ice dancing up next, then off to men's curling, Holger.
Absolutely. Curling I'm really excited about curling because it's such a relaxing sport to watch. And there's still suspense. It's amazing.
How is it relaxing? I don't know about anyone else, but when I see curling, I get really bad anxiety about how badly my floors need to be cleaned.
Yes.
Because I see that guy and I'm like, oh God, that guy's probably really good at cleaning floors. And then I'm like, I'm really bad. If I'm not getting into it, am I not getting the floors clean?
It's a common side effect, but the real suspense in curling is somebody going to fall on their butts? Like,
okay, that is true.
It happens every now and then, right? So, and you can't laugh about it, right? In the heat of the moment, right? On the ice, I mean, slippery, right? But yeah, it happens even to the Olympic level.
See, here's the problem. The Winter Olympics bring out the worst in me. This is the big problem. This is, I'm a sports fan, right? But the Winter Olympics really bring out like the mean side of me as a sports fan, because I'm that person who during figure skating, I'm like, fall. And when they do, I'm like, oh.
Quadruple jump, it's impossible.
Right, and I'm like, oh, yes, like especially if I don't want that person to medal, I like find myself wishing, potential injury on them. I'm not nice, Holger.
No.
But with that, we should probably talk about tech news, huh?
Yeah. Are there any tech news last week?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, we've had a couple things going on. I mean, well, here's one I'll tell you about. I mean, hey, in my space, damn, we got a new unicorn running around. We have some nice, healthy investment to the tune of about $100 million going into the digital asset management company Cloudinary, becoming officially a unicorn in the space. The valuation's now up to about $2 billion with a B. And, I think it's surprised a lot of people. I know I've been getting a lot of calls about it, being like, what? Digital asset management has a unicorn? What are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, because you've seen the unicorns run through the beginning part of the customer experience journey. And now we're finally starting to see people realize you kind of need something at the tail end to deliver that journey, right? So you've created all of these assets, you've created all of these things that kind of power that visual and auditory experience across digital. You need a really great place to not only put it, but also to be able to use it, to be able to share it across the enterprise, to be able to manipulate it, to be able to personalize it. And Cloudinary has done just that, right? And they've done a really good job of looking forward into what type of asset is going to come next. So they've been really heavy into video. They look at 3D. They're looking at 3D, AR, VR. They're even starting to talk like, is an NFT an asset? Like, what do we do when that actually happens? So they're thinking out into the future, and they're not thinking about the things, which is nice. They're thinking about how people use them, right? I think for a long time, asset management has been about the thing, has been about the file, the PDF, the email, like enterprise asset management, right? Everyone wants to talk about the email, the data, the files, the folder.
Right.
We haven't really talked about is how do people use those things? How do they access them? Do they have to spend 10 hours tagging them? Now that we're seeing AI start to do some really nice smart tagging, we're starting to see some auto manipulation where you can auto render certain files. You have those things at your fingertips. DAM's becoming a really damn interesting space. So thought that was some pretty.
There's another damn unicorn.
It's another damn unicorn running around this damn field, I tell you.
It's probably the most recent one is bigger one is like Cisco supposedly trying to acquire Splunk in my space, which would be the biggest acquisition Cisco has ever made, right? It was like the serial acquire, the acquisition machine of some time ago, but obviously the company was trying to look for new revenue, so it would be a bold move up the stack into SaaS and data as a service and PaaS repository. So we'll see if that happens, yeah.
I think it makes it, I think for Cisco, it also makes a really interesting move on the security side of their portfolio, because for a long time, when they've been looking at things like Umbrella and all the other services, I think that they have really been stuck in a bit of kind of not being able to fully make that shift into some of the cloud tools. But with Splunk, all of a sudden, they get a nice little portfolio that starts to make Cisco on the security side have a spot at the conversation again, which I think is,
Yeah.
you know,
No, you point actually to one of risks in this, right? That an older company like Cisco, well established, acquires a younger company and then says, okay, forget everything we've done the last 5 years. We really need you for what Splunk got known for, right? For the log crunching, right? We really have a use case
right.
against this.
We need you for observability and log management.
Right? Reduction to that, right? I hope that won't be happening.
Oh gosh, that's going to be a mistake.
But now that you said it, I'm getting substantially, realistically scared of that potentially happening.
I'm so sorry to have ruined your outlook.
I'm not sure if I can sleep tonight. I think Cisco might reduce Splunk to logging again.
Oh, no. The irony of that, of course, is that even traditional log companies, right, like organizations that are even, you know, some of the startups in the log space, they're starting to advance beyond what logging truly had really been meant to do. Right?
Observability now.
Yeah, well, I know. That's right. We're not allowed to call it logging anymore, are we?
Logging, what is this?
Cool.
Yeah, to explain to people, right? Which is like ops or something, right? So,
right.
But don't worry. The other interesting thing is, right, there is this chip capacity deficit, the CPD, right? Which is real in the world. Everybody's talking about. Pat Gelsinger is trying to revamp the new Intel, and he's thinking out of the box because there used to be the time where a factory from Intel had to be Intel planned from the cradle to the go production with everything on specs and so on. He does what is unthinkable, right? He's trying to buy Tower Semiconductor for also not chump change 5.4 billion after they failed to buy Cloud Foundries earlier. So he's thinking creatively to solve all these chip production quality, chip production capacity shortages.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Next, they're going to have to go onto switches. The chips and switches, you don't know what to get hold of. Yeah. That's fine. It's fine. No one needs those anymore, right?
Yep.
That's fine. Well, you know, the other new thing that's kind of popping up, like here we are mid-February. I think we all knew it was coming, but we've started to see that first wave of new propositions and new regulations, right? Yes. So, you know, just last week, we saw some new regulations, you know, introduced here in the US around kids' safety. You know, how do we start to get the big tech giants to be more responsible with our kids and how our kids are able to get to safety? So we're starting to see the Kids Online Safety Act was just introduced, trying to ensure that social media platforms have easier ways for kids to opt out of some of the things that tend to be the most harmful for them, right? How do they opt out of being shown recommendations?
Be an easy Facebook opt-out for kids, which is only 3 clicks, not the difficult one that we grown-up have to go
Right,
through.
like I shouldn't have to go to 19 places and then call a grown-up to be able to say, someone's being mean to me, I don't want to see this anymore, right? So I think that there's a lot of things that should be done and could be done, but we're starting to see that regulatory arc start to ramp up. And I think it's something that we're going to see, unfortunately, become part of the midterm election politicized grist here in the States. We're going to see a lot more things get introduced that people and individuals potentially up for re-election can hang their hats on. The upside of that is I think it starts in a lot of really important conversations around things that our colleague, Steve Wilson, starts to talk about, right? Like, what is the concept of digital safety aside from privacy laws and regulations? Like, what are we responsible for? And what, as organizations, what should we be looking for when it comes to infrastructure, the actual infrastructure of our information, of our privacy, of our identities? What does that start to look like? So I think a lot of those conversations are going to start to ramp up, but we've started to see that. But, you know, Holger, the biggest news up around these parts, Super Bowl, dude.
Well, yeah. I watched it till 4:30 in the morning over here in Europe, so yeah.
4:30 in the morning, you watch the Super Bowl, but do they play the ads?
Nope.
See, okay, well then you missed the whole point of the Super Bowl, right? And
I heard the apps were disappointing, and I knew I would talk to you about the apps, the ads. So, what was the best ad list?
Well, you know, here's the funny thing about Super Bowl ads, and you can go online and watch them. I'll send you a link in YouTube. You can go and watch every single one of them because they were all released before the big game anyway. But right. If there was one thing that this year's Brand Bowl certainly kind of made very clear, was that it was okay for brands to laugh again and let us laugh again, right? As the viewers, the ads weren't so serious. Like there weren't so many, like, we're all in it together, thanks to the front line. Like we were kind of starting to get out of the pandemic seriousness, and we're starting to get back to, you know, an element of entertainment when we're actually watching content, on things like TV and on video, which was nice to see. It was also nice to see that people were hiring celebrities again, so they can all get out of the unemployment line. Because for about a couple years, we were only hiring digital influencers, right? So now instead of having like the chef blogger as the person who's selling the butter, it was, a celebrity actually going and doing that. So it was kind of nice to see that, nice to see those little millionaires get their paychecks back. So that was fun to see.
And I heard there was so much digital currency, whatever.
There's this thing. I don't know if you've heard about it yet, Holger, but it's called crypto.
No, what is that?
Well, if you ask the ads, no one knows. That's the problem. The bigger issue is if you were to actually try to find that.
Spend more on it, then people will get educated.
Well, and that's the big problem, right? Is that, I mean, if there was something that I got out of this Super Bowl's advertising, was that we've lost a little bit of that advertising and marketing 101 muscle memory in as far as marketing and advertising executives. We've lost a little of the muscle memory of how to do this, right? So you had brands paying $7 million for a 30-second spot and then not bothering to look at online advertising search to make sure you couldn't get usurped online, right? So listen, the reality is that conquesting isn't new.
To spend money.
Right. Conquesting isn't new, but Anheuser-Busch didn't bother to go and make sure that Coors couldn't buy advertising on the beer page on Amazon or on Instacart. That's called some lost muscle memory right there. That's the first thing we would have done 5 years ago, but we've kind of lost some of that. So I think, for me, it was kind of a call to get back to a little bit of that advertising operations, a little bit of that kind of process 101 of how do we make sure that the investments that we're making kind of get the sharp elbows out and make sure we're protecting it.
But now, for closing, what's the really big news in sports in the world of soccer? Who's number one in Italy since Sunday?
Oh my God! Is it someone in Rome? Is it someone?
No, close. Say right country. No. Yeah.
Okay, it's your boys.
World order was restored. AC Milan's on top of the table in Serie A. People care. This was a news roundup with Liz Miller. Hopefully, we entertain you with some things which are not the typical news roundup.
Absolutely. We also have to give one last shout out of congratulations to Brent Leary, Super Bowl champions, LA Rams. Just for you, Brent.
Hello everybody, it's Holger Müller here from Constellation Research, here with Gerhard Wenzel from Oracle, talking about one of the interesting innovations happening at Oracle, which is adding MongoDB capabilities to the Autonomous database. Why would Oracle do that, Gerhard?
Yeah, we added the capability of running MongoDB applications against Autonomous, essentially. So it's one step further in our converged database story to giving the APIs to developers that they want to use and leverage.
Yeah, so the API focus, right? Same APIs like MongoDB practically.
That's right, yeah, it's compatible. It's the same APIs. If a MongoDB application comes along or MongoDB tooling that a developer uses, that just works out of the box with Autonomous database as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting as a move because APIs are open source, they can be used, but is that an inherent acknowledgement of Oracle saying that MongoDB is better at writing applications?
No, not necessarily. So what we are on the one hand saying is we understand that JSON is a data format that developers want to use, right? It's just like they want to use relational and graph and so many other formats that we have seen these days. And of course, it's a fact that a lot of the JSON data gets accumulated in MongoDB and MongoDB is out there. But the reason why we introduced the API was actually out of customer demand. So we have a lot of customers coming over right now that want to migrate off MongoDB onto Autonomous database for our converged database technologies or capabilities. And as such, we want to make their lives easier with migration. So rather than them having to rewrite applications from scratch, they can just bring over the MongoDB applications alongside it and then worry about them after the fact, right? Whether they want to rewrite them or continue to have them.
And that's important. You want to go live as soon as possible without tedious rewrites, right? So what are some of the advantages if I come from MongoDB Atlas and move to Oracle's Autonomous database? What are some of the benefits I see as a customer?
Yeah, one of the main benefits for a developer if you come over, I would say, is the lack of limitation. So we have built-in transactions. We don't have things like you can only touch up to 1,000 documents in one transaction or up to 1 minute long. And also we allow you to have SQL over JSON or any of the other Oracle database capabilities over JSON as well. So as you come over as a developer, you will see very quickly that you have a whole raft of new features and functionalities that will be available to you. As a customer in general, Autonomous Database offers a lot more capabilities built into the infrastructure of it being the Autonomous Database. So the securing aspects, the tuning aspects, the self-driving aspects that people want benefit of when they come over to Autonomous Database.
Yeah, the autonomous self-driving is definitely one of the standalone capabilities, right? Which, interesting to me, nobody has really copied like this. But then specifically, what you solve that DocumentDB can't do?
Well, so what we're seeing out there is that the pendulum is swinging back from, we just use the right database for one format and then fragment our data and then integrate either a convolution of microservices or inside the application to more like, hey, I want to use JSON data alongside my relational data. Hey, I want to use, simple SQL aggregation over my JSON data. So one example that we have there to point out is we're one of the largest logistics companies on the world. They track packages in JSON format. So each package essentially is represented as a JSON document, the tracking status in there. And they after every day is over, they basically ask, okay, how many packages are stuck, how many packages have not been delivered yet. On these kind of business questions, they could answer just really, really cumbersomely with MongoDB in that case, right? And they already a couple of years ago came over to Oracle to say, hey, we can just abstract this question in SQL, and it's really simple to do so. And these are kind of these benefits that you get on top of that. When you start embracing the data format, doesn't necessarily dictate the database technology that some vendors would make you want to believe.
Very interesting. But if you look at the market, if you look beyond MongoDB, right, there's obviously Microsoft's Cosmos DB. How does it compare? And how do you compare to it?
Yeah, so Cosmos DB claims to be a multimodal database. They essentially say, hey, you can store JSON document, graphs, or relational data in it. But really what the developers only get to see when they start using it, that's really kind of a mode of operation that you choose. So when you connect to a Cosmos DB, you have to say, hey, I want to treat this as a document store. Hey, I want to treat this as a graph store. And once you do that, all the data resides in that sort of isolation. So there's still, again, no capability to just do something like analyze data from graph and relational across boundaries in Cosmos DB. Like if you choose that it's a graph database, you're stuck with a graph database. If you choose to use it as a document store, you're stuck with a document store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very important part of that. Why do developers care so, right? Typically, you have your document or JSON database and then the other database. Why does it bring advantage for developers to bring everything together with multiple formats in a single database?
Simplicity, simply put. It's like developers want to be productive to write their applications. They don't really have to want to worry of how to get the data from one database to another, how to integrate the data. It's like one good example we have is a US-based computer manufacturer who uses JSON for their laptop diagnostics. So when you spin up the diagnostic agent, it will send JSON back to them. And of course, they have a CRM system of all the customers that bought laptops, which sits in relational. So they basically said there are two use cases. On one hand, they said, well, if a customer of us has like a faulty device that's kind of like been faulty for more than 2-3 times within a certain time frame, maybe we give them some voucher, maybe we give them a new machine altogether. On the same side, they said, well, if we see that out of the new model that we shipped 20,000 times the fan is faulty, then we actually might have a faulty component that we need to switch out. Both of these were really simple for them to answer once they put this JSON diagnostic information in Oracle alongside the CRM relational data, because now they could just do these SQL queries across these data formats. They could join across these. And it just became a question of writing the SQL rather than making it a question of like how to extract the JSON data from MongoDB, how to extract the relational data from the Oracle database, where do we actually do all the number crunching, etc., etc.
Right, and you basically made the case here for what Oracle calls the converged database, right? So any other benefits that we haven't touched yet?
Yeah, so I think, the reason why we keep going on about converged databases, because we saw now vendors really, everybody starts claiming that they are multimodal database. And what we understand with multimodal is very different to what they say. So you mentioned Cosmos DB before, a prime example of that, right? Cosmos DB says, we are multimodal database. You can store JSON if you want, you can store relational if you want. But what we're actually saying with this is like, well, if you should have a database that brings all the functionality of the database to whatever format you store in the database. And so that's why we're saying converged. So you want to do a data redaction on JSON data, you should be able to do so. You want to analyze across different data sets, you should be able to do so. You want to do spatial analytics, you can do so. And so converged is all about, or much more about, bringing all the functionalities that a database gives you to all of your data types. A very, very simple one that developers will probably love out there is like, there's no reason in Oracle why a transaction couldn't span your JSON workload as well as your relational. If you want to insert the JSON document, update a field in a relational column, you can do this all in one transaction without any hand coding around it or anything. It's just all there, it's all built in. And that's really why we say converged database, where these functionalities converge into one technology. An analogy, a very good analogy that we're using is the smartphone. Right, and I think that's really the one thing that developers should think about, or users should think about out there. That, you know, it was cool to have like an iPod and a camera and a pager and whatever, like so many years ago, but back then the functionality necessitated that technology. Nowadays we have it all in a smartphone, right? And chances are the majority of people take better pictures on their smartphone than they actually do in an expensive Sony or something.
Right. Because it's also available, right? So coming back to the new offering around MongoDB APIs, what does it cost for developers to get started?
That's the best part. It's entirely free to get started. Just head over to oracle.com/cloud/free, sign up for an always free tier of the Autonomous Database, and try it out right there and see all the good stuff that you get, all the power that it gives you to build new applications or build applications faster.
Very interesting. Well, let me thank you, Gerald. This was very informative. I learned a lot. Hopefully everybody who's watching to this learned a lot also about Oracle's new MongoDB APIs available in the Autonomous Database. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you, Holger.
Well, we're going to wrap up today's episode of CRTV with a little bit of an update on Constellation's shortlists. So if you have not seen already, Constellation Research's shortlists have all been updated. At least our Q1 updates have all been released. You can go to our website at constellationsr.com to check out all of the shortlists that are new in our Q1 2022 release. But Holger and I have a couple that are near and dear to our heart, and we want to just kind of talk you through them while we had you for a few minutes. This quarter, I took the opportunity to introduce three.
Why are they shortlists? We have to step back for 1 second, right? Shortlist is all about to practice faster decisions, not to take 9 months to select some kind of software, but there's a trusted shortlist from us Constellation analysts about the people who really matter in that specific category to help you accelerate your selection process, and with that, practice something near and dear to my heart, enterprise acceleration. And
very true. Enterprise and process acceleration, something also very near and dear to Holger's Germanness.
You can't have any enterprise acceleration with your process running faster. It's very simple.
See, it's very true. It's very true. And listen, these are the vendors you need to know. We typically, most analysts, I don't know about you, Holger, but I know I probably on average are looking anywhere between 30, 40 upwards in some of the larger categories, the more robust categories, sometimes more than I even want to count. But it can be really hard to get them down to 7 or, even less than 10 sometimes.
Because we like them all, right? So we like innovation.
And that's hard. And I think the thing that I constantly get asked about our short lists is, do you just have large vendors, or are you just looking at startups? And I will honestly say that we're looking at a cross section of all the vendors. That this is where you start. It's not necessarily who you're going to buy. It's not the one company that we're all saying only get this one. This is truly the short list that we feel has the best capabilities, the best functionalities that fit within this individual segment of technology. So it's kind of like your starting point for anything. So with that, Holger, why don't you start? What were some of your top short lists that you released this time around?
Yeah, so the interesting one is, of course, always the new ones, right? It's in the second edition now. It's about enterprise application platforms. It's the PaaS tools under and SaaS suite. So the tools that allow you to extend, to integrate, and to build new applications on top of a SaaS piece. They go hand in hand with their two sisters, which have been long around. There's two shortlists, sometimes confusing, but I have to explain it. For PaaS suites, those are tightly coupled PaaS products, which you bring together in a single product, versus PaaS tool suites, which basically only have an umbrella name and say, look, here are the tools that you want to use for that. So 3 kind of like PaaS tool lists, short lists to look after.
Well, then I had to see your 3 passes with my own CASs. I introduced 2 CAS lists this time around with Unified Communications as a service and Contact Center as a service. So, 2 big areas in voice that are certainly coming in loud and clear as organizations are really realizing that customers, as much as they love the capacity to self-serve, when it really hits the fan, they still want to pick up the phone. So how are we bringing that all together? So when you start to look at UCaaS and CCaaS, you're looking at the 2 ends of that communication spectrum. With UCaaS, you tend to start internally about the communications that run across the enterprise and then can extend outbound and envelop a lot of those functionalities. And in the UCaaS system, we're certainly seeing those vendors really beginning to merge those 2 areas together of how are we getting internal communications and collaborations tools to align with how we then can communicate outbound and take in those inbound calls that are coming in from our customers and use that same mechanism for voice, conversation, communication, and collaboration. So some of the same tools that we're seeing being utilized so that you can collaborate within the organization, we're now starting to see so that you can collaborate actually with the customer. And that's going to be a really important switch, especially as we start talking about distributed networks, operations, when we start talking about, yes, the metaverse.
Ooh.
It's going to be all about that co-creation and collaboration and that shared experience with your customer. So do you have that communications infrastructure in place so that type of immersive experience can happen? One of the reasons why people are really starting to look at their UCaaS systems, CCaaS, of course, looking at how customer communications and how those inbound calls, those moments of real need across that continuum of experience can really happen. So, brought those 2 lists. And then, of course, the third horseman of the apocalypse of that area being contact center operations. How do we bring all the content? How do we bring kind of the data, that capacity for personalization, the capacity to automate a lot of those engagements for our contact center? How do we make the contact center not that place where we beat people if they talk to customers too long, right? How do we actually make it that robust service area that can actually aid and help us accelerate opportunity and profitability across that experience enterprise? So
think about it. Right, very nice. But think about 2022. And 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, I was building contact center software, my teams were building it, right? I was reading analyst reports, and I'm pretty sure I saw something like in 2020, the contact
Smart routing, it was a thing.
And as we talk about reminiscence, when you said CAS lists, right, I was thinking about the venerable computer-aided selling, which is older than today. So it's time to maybe we have to make a retro CAS decision.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Holger. So here's my big secret. And don't tell anyone this. Shh. The reason why we needed to introduce these lists was so that we could actually start to get to something better. Because you're absolutely right. When it comes to this world, especially in the contact center, I think a lot of folks and a lot of executives have been rooted in a very old school definition of what the contact center means to the enterprise. It isn't the center of voice of where the customer's voice actually comes into the enterprise, but it should be. It's not the problem-solving unit that has to get customers off the phone faster to make our calls cheaper. Those days have to go. We have to get rid of that thinking, and we have to start moving into. So those conversations that you were having when your teams were building a lot of these systems, it's still the same conversation. The difference being is that the customer is actively hanging up on those brands that haven't figured it out. Right. So it's the customer walking with their wallet because the customer's like, I'm sorry, did you just transfer me to 5 different people and then hang up on me and not actually resolve my problem?
Yeah.
Let me go into
you don't know if you change vendors, it's going to be better there because it's so miserable as experience, right?
Right. So I think
talking about the future, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of change.
Quantum computing, right? Certainly quantum computing is the future. We don't know when it's going to be around the corner, kind of like the opposite problem of centers, which are around the corner. I have a new shortlist on this. Of course, we had to start with quantum computing platforms. It was the hardware from 2 years ago. Then the software platforms came out, and now, of course, you can combine them and you can have a full stack for quantum computing. So that's.
But who's ready for that? This is what I because I think people want to talk about it. People want to know, like, okay, what is quantum, and is it something that I really need? But who's really ready to are there use cases where you're seeing people, they're ready, you're like, they're ready to take that next step, they're going to go accelerate their business, they're going to move into this layer, they're ready to go?
It's still early days, but there's a commercial use case now from one of the shortlist customers, Honeywell, around encryption as a service. Right, which is an interesting one. So that's the general part where we know quantum will have a space. But then there's interesting things which close near to my heart as well, which is chemistry. I have a minor in chemistry, and chemistry does not transport very well in ones and zeros. You cannot.
Nope. We're stopping right there. Every single viewer of CRTV right now is like, yes, Liz, we have to stop right here. Rewind. You have a minor in chemistry?
Yes. I want to have something concrete, not just the blah blah of business administration, right? So, I had to have something tangible. Yeah.
I'm now suddenly really kind of scared of you, Holger, because really, if we cross you, you're gonna blow something up, aren't you? Like what? What is
that? Was the doing TNT the third time. That was really fun. Yeah. In the lab.
Okay, we can keep going back to shortlist. I'm gonna think about this whole chemistry dance teacher.
Chemistry quantum is
I now know about. Blowing my mind.
Chemical equation modeling is very, very interesting in quantum. Yeah.
I'm still, and then like the dance instructor and the ski instructor. I need a short list on Holger. I'm so confused by you. Okay, so hey, Holger, when we think about our next round of short lists, is there a short list you're thinking of that you wanted to introduce next quarter?
Well, in summer, right? Summer is the future of work one. The winter is next generation application one. So, yeah, there might be something coming, but I can't spill it.
I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many times in customer experience conversations when we're talking about, okay, what tools do people need? They're talking about customer experience strategy and what tools then go and empower those strategies. Everyone's talking about employee experience, right? Like it's some brand new category that everyone just stumbled across yesterday. And I'm like, I think there's this dude named Holger. He kind of talks about it too. So maybe
I have a love-hate relationship with the employee experience, right? Because everybody talks about it. It's so important, right? And there's so many HCM vendors who really think they can do a big thing for the employee experience because it was so great to talk about, but nobody wants to use an HR system. The less time you have an HR system, your job is to go away, right? So the only people who have a chance on the employee experience is Microsoft, it's Apple, and it's Google with Android, because that's where people spend a significant amount of time on those platforms. The other guys, they can only screw it up. The other one is where people say, I need to have my MacBook, I need to have my Windows machine to have my employee experience to succeed at work, right?
I think we need to end this episode of CRTV right there, because, ladies and gentlemen, Holger Mueller just admitted that Apple was going to go do something.
Not going to do something, but has a chance.
Okay, they've got a chance. That's the most I've ever heard you give Apple.
Windows and Android have a much bigger part in this, right? Because the world runs on Android, right? 800 million computers, but yeah. So
that I think brings it to a close for us here on episode, I don't even know what, 28.
We have to talk. The highlight of the shortlist thing is that Dion and me have done the unthinkable, that we reduced and split the low-code, no-code shortlist now.
Is there a low-code and then a no-code shortlist? Please tell me that exists.
Yes, they exist for enterprise low-code and the citizen developer low-code. We managed to do the Gordian knot splitting on low-code and no-code, which is part of my gray hair now. So.
Well, see, there you go. Now you and Diane are going to both claim that the other person gave the other person gray hair. It's going to be great.
Well, we had both gray hair before, but just got a little
That's true. That's true. Well, now that is what really brings us to the end of this episode of CRTV. I think we even took you a little over, folks, but thanks for joining, and we will catch you next time. Listen, don't miss out on the next episode in which Dion Hinchcliffe and Doug Henshin will take you through another rousing update on the news. But in the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at ConstellationR. You can follow us at CRTV_show. Liz K. Miller or Holger MU. I think that does it for all of our Twitter handles. You know where to find us. Until next time, folks. Hey, Holger.
Mm-hmm.
Want to know the plan?
Yes. What are we doing?
We're doing CRTV, bud. What do you think we're doing?
Yeah. Who does the intro?
You
again?
do. You do.
But,
I watched my first rugby game ever over the weekend.
Did you not just kind of think to yourself, though, how is it, like, are they all touching their butts?
there is no holding on the parts you're thinking of. So that's
Everyone's in there like, hey, this is my face, and it's up against your butt.
It's between.
That's what they're all doing. They're all like,
no, it's between butts. Butts are here. Your face is here. You go always in the gaps. Not
just
those
saying,
gaps.
some people call it a sport, other people call it a party. Let's spend 10 minutes critiquing everyone else's short.
Exactly. Can't compete with Metaverse. 11 minutes.
Your head is literally in the clouds. Like your head is disappearing into the clouds.
This is how it has to be for analysts, right?
I have a halo around my head, like here, so totally appropriate.
How much did you pay for that halo? Yeah. How is it powered? How do you make sure the battery doesn't crash?
No, it's through the horns. It's through the horns.
I just had an epiphany, Liz. You know,
Oh,
we're the
God.
double M. We're the double M show, and they're the double D show.
We can't call them that though.
Dion and Doug.
That could be an HR challenge. And now off to bloopers.
M&M and D&D.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Hannah, good luck cutting that one, babe.
What
Oh,
about
it's
you?
1 a.m. Let's do this. Come on.
Yep.
Okay.
No.